is Marie Bennett here with episode 3 of Tools of the Trade, and today we're talking about the different inks and tools you use with the inks when you're making greeting cards or scrapbook pages. The first ink I want to talk about is StazOn. This is a permanent black ink, and when you're using kind of the slick white or very vanilla cardstock, the regular Stampin' Up! Basic black ink smudges. It doesn't dry very fast. So if you're using either one of those two colors, the Whisper White or very vanilla, then you need to use this jet black StazOn ink because it dries quickly. It's not a water-based ink. So if you're going to color using the markers, then this ink will not blur or run into your image. So for the most part, when you're stamping black, you should use the StazOn Jet Black. There is an exception, and this is the ink called Memento Tuxedo Black. This ink is also fast drying and will not smudge when you're using alcohol-based markers. Most of the markers that you will be using are water-based. They're called Stampin' Right markers, and they look like this. They come in all the colors of the ink. But we do have markers that are called Blendabilities, and these are alcohol-based markers. So if you're coloring with Blendabilities, you need to be using the Memento Tuxedo Black ink when you stamp your image. This ink will wash off of your stamp using water. This ink, the StazOn, will not wash off of your stamp. It doesn't damage the stamp that it stains it, but it will not wash off with water. In order to clean this off of your stamps, you need to use this product called, I don't know if you can read that, StazOn All-Purpose Stamp Cleaner. And this stamp cleaner will remove the ink from your rubber stamps, and it also conditions the rubber so it won't damage your stamp. Alright, those are the specialty inks. I have one more specialty ink, and it's called Whisper White Craft. See, it says Craft Stampin' Pad. This is Whisper White. And when you open a Stampin' Up! Ink pad, you have to push with your thumb on the top layer, pull with your fingers on the bottom. So you're going to push and pull at the same time. That opens it up. Then you flip it back and slide it in place. The thing you need to know about this Craft White, Whisper White ink pad is that you have to be very careful not to accidentally stamp on this ink pad with a stamp that has not been cleaned. Because if you do, you're going to get a little stain. I don't know if you can see. I was using a pink, and I forgot to clean my stamp off before I stamped it on the white, and now this stamp pad has got a little pink area. So if I want to get white ink, then I need to stamp over here away from where I stained it with pink. Okay, so if you saw how it closed, there are two little spaces here where you can stick your fingers, and then you're going to use your thumb and you're going to push on this tab while you pull on that, slide it out, flip it closed, and snap it in place. This takes practice, and it's kind of frustrating when you're first learning how to get in and out of Stampin' Up! Ink pads. They slide open and they slide closed. One of the reasons for this design is if you look at the stamp pad, when you're using it, the pad is on top and the ink is absorbed in the pad. Well, when it's closed, the pad is facing down and the liquid of the ink sinks down to the surface of the pad. So the next time you want to use it, your stamp pad is nice and moist. The Stampin' Up! Stamp pads are water-based ink. So that means that they will evaporate if they're left open, and they'll dry out and you can ruin them. So you only need to have your stamp pad open while you're using it. When you're finished using it, close it up. And if you're using more than one color, don't do what I did. Close up the one you're not using when you're done using it, and only have the one open that you are using. When you get your ink pads, they're going to be wrapped in a cellophane wrapper like this one. And that keeps them fresh, and it keeps them from accidentally coming open in shipping and damaging the case. So what you need to do is remove this plastic wrapping and throw that away. And then if you turn your stamp pad over, you'll see on the back there are some labels, and these tell you the name of the color. So this is Strawberry Slush, and it's written in 4 languages. Well, we want the English language, so we're going to pull off that English label, or try anyway. We got everything but the label. Pull off the little thing that says Strawberry Slush, and then at the end of the pad that has the little tab right here, on the lid part, you're going to stick this little label right here. These ink pads need to be stored flat. So if you have them flat and stacked on top of each other, or however you're going to store them, you'll always be able to tell what color ink is in the pad, because the label is right there for you to read, and also the label is done in the color of the ink pad. So this is a brand new pad, and if I want to open it up, I need to push with my thumb and pull with my fingers, flip it up, and slide it in position. And then I have a nice Strawberry Slush ink pad. To close it, I stick my 2 fingers in these grooves, I push on this tab with my thumb, slide it open, flip it shut, and slide it into place. And you can hear it snap shut. Alright, if you take good care of these stamp pads, they will last a long time before they need to be replaced. But you could conceivably use all of the ink, or most of the ink, and then you wouldn't be getting a good coating on your stamp. If that happens, then you take your refill. So this is a Strawberry Slush refill, and it goes with that Strawberry Slush pad. And all I would have to do is open up my bottle of ink, hold it over the stamp, whoops, I'm going to trip. Hold it over your stamp pad and just pour it on like that, and let your stamp pad soak that ink up. Another thing you can use is your bone folder. After you have drizzled ink all over your pad, then you just take your bone folder and run it back and forth like that to even out the ink within the pad. And this bone folder is stained from doing that, but it doesn't rub off on anything, it's just a stain. And the same thing with your stamps. If your stamps get stained, some of our darker red inks will stain the photopolymer stamps. If they get stained, it doesn't hurt them at all. They look old because they're stained, but that won't hurt them. Okay, the next basic inking tool besides the stamp pad is the Stampin' Write marker. And this marker is Strawberry Slush, and it matches exactly the Strawberry Slush ink that's in this stamp pad. That's one of the nice things about the ink collection, is all of the inks match exactly. And if you buy the papers, the inks in the papers also match exactly. So you don't ever have to look to try to find what color ink is going to go with this paper, because you just find an exact match in your collection. These markers have two tips, and on the marker there's a little symbol. This symbol tells you that this is the brush end, and this symbol tells you that this is the writing end. So on the writing end there's a little narrow point. I don't think it's really a ball. It's some kind of a plastic that wicks the ink down to the tip, and then you can write with it or color small spaces. This tip is kind of like a paintbrush, and it's solid. It doesn't have hairs like a paintbrush, but it paints like a paintbrush. These markers need to be stored flat, like this, not in a jar up and down like that, but flat, because since they have two tips, you want the ink to be available at the tip that you want to use, and the only way to help that happen is to store the marker flat. These markers can dry out just like the stamp pad, so you need to put the tip back on when you're finished using it. These are expensive markers. They cost about $4 a piece to replace right now, so you want to take care of them. If you use the marker a lot and it dries out, similar to the stamp pad, it's very easy to fix. You take a pair of tweezers and you pull this tip out. You just pull it out, and then you pour some ink into the marker and put the cap back on. Put the tip, slide it back in with the tweezers until it's firm, and then store it flat, and the next thing you know, your marker will be revitalized. The next tools I'd like to talk about are these Aqua Pens, and they come in a set of two. One has a blue cap and one has a clear cap. The clear cap is the smaller of the two. It comes to a smaller point. These are like paint brushes, and you use them like paint brushes, only you fill them with water. You don't put ink in the tube, you just put water in there. I guess if you wanted to use it with one color for a long time, you could fill it with the ink and paint with it that way. But if you just fill it with water, then you can use it with several colors at the same time. Okay, this is the blue one with the blue cap, is the larger tip. And let me take this off, and then you can see the difference in the size of the tips. One is quite a bit larger than the other. So you can do finer painting with this than you can with that. And like all of the other tools, when you're not using it, keep the cap on. You can store this Aqua Pen with water in it, so when you want to use it, it's ready to go. So you don't have to empty it out when you're done using it. Just leave the water in there, and then it'll be ready for you when you need it. To use an Aqua Pen, there are a couple of things you can do. If you want to paint something with your Aqua Pen that you want to give it more of a watercolor look than you get when you're just using the marker, then what you do is you squeeze on the label area right here. Squeeze it a few times before you open the ink pad. And then when you open it, on the lid of the ink pad is a smudge of ink from the pad. And then all you need to do is don't snap it. Don't do this. Don't put the ink pad over the lid. Leave the lid like that. And then with your Aqua Pen, you'll just kind of get this little ink spot wet. So drizzle a little water, and you can see the water go, where am I? Sorry. You can see the water drip right into my hand there, see? So you don't want to squeeze too hard because you don't want a puddle. That'll get your paper too wet. You just take your Aqua Pen when the tip is wet and swoosh it around that ink, and then you can color like this, and you see what it gives you a watercolor look, and you can make it as dark or as light as you want. So that's light, but maybe I want it to be dark, so I can make it a little darker. And there are times when you want to use this watercolor look, like maybe you just want to, and we'll make a card like this, just swoosh some ink on your paper and then stamp a greeting over the top of it. So that's how you use an aqua brush. When you're finished, they're easy to clean. You just take a piece of scratch paper and you just keep squeezing the water through the tip and move it around, and when there's no more color coming out of the brush, then it's clean and you can use it with a different color. And I don't know if you can tell, but you can see that the brush has absorbed some of that pink, that strawberry slush color, but it's not going to come off of there. It just stained the tip of the paintbrush, and it doesn't hurt anything. It won't change the color of the next ink you use. Okay, the next tool I want to show you is called a blender pen, and the blender pen has two tips also. There goes that Yorkie. She's growling at me again. Her name's Gracie. Okay, so you can see the ends are the same, but it gives you the flexibility of being able to use your pen with two different colors. So the way a blender pen works is you stamp your image, and I'm going to stamp this picture here, this flower. And so because it's a large stamp, I'm going to turn my stamp pad upside down and apply the ink to the stamp, and that way I can see that the whole stamp is covered in ink. Okay, then I'll turn it over and stamp the paper. Close up my ink pad because I'm done with that. And then the blender pen I use to kind of draw the ink into these spaces right here. So if you look at it before, you can see that it's strawberry slush and white, because I stamped it on Whisper White paper. But if I take my blender pen, I can draw some of that strawberry slush ink into the white space, and it becomes pink. So you see what I did? I softened the white right here. And if I want it more, I just keep drawing more of the ink into that space to get whatever shade I want it to be. I hope that's showing up. But the purpose of a blender pen is to blend the edge of your ink into a space where there is no ink. So what you're going to do to clean your blender pen, you do the exact same thing you do with the Aqua Pen. You just run it on the paper until there's no more color coming off of the blender pen. And then you put the cap back on. You do not have to add water to this pen. You don't have to add anything to this pen. Just when it wears out, you just need to buy a new one. I've had this one for 2 years and it's still working really well. So that's a blender pen. The third or the next type of ink I want to talk to you about are these Blendabilities. These are alcohol markers, and they come in 3 shades of the same color. This color is called Melon Mambo. And so when you use alcohol markers, you need to use the Tuxedo black ink. So I'm just going to turn this over, and I've got another stamp. This Memento Tuxedo black will wash right off of this stamp when I'm done, just by running water over it. And see how I got some black on the wood? That just shows that you've used your stamp, which is nice, because that's why you have them. Okay, so now I've got 3 shades of the same color, Melon Mambo, and I can color these tulips to give them some depth. You know, it makes them look like more like a real picture of a tulip and less like just a drawing that's been colored. So I think the lighter part of the tulip is probably in the middle. So I'm going to color, and you don't color back and forth. You just pick your pen up and draw the coloring marks. Okay, so the part that I want to be light, for sure I'm coloring with the light. But and when you open these, if you look at the Blendabilities, the cap is not round, so it's only going to go on this pen one way. So what you do is you lay it down so that the Stampin' Up! Logo is up, lay it down, and then slide the lid on until you hear it snap. It'll only go on that way. So when it snaps, you know you got it on right. Okay, then I'm going to take the next dark color, and these Blendabilities have 2 tips also. They've got a brush tip, and they've got a more of a writing tip. I hope you can see these. The light down here is terrible. And I'm going to use this little tip because I don't want to have the whole flower this color. I want to have just shaded in where I think the next darker area is going to be. So now I can just take my middle color, I think they call it medium, and just put some on there where I want it to be. Okay, same thing. When I close it, I put the logo up, slide it in place until it clicks. Okay, then the darker, I got the wrong one. The darker shades will be where you would expect the flower itself to be very dark. And with this particular stamp, you can kind of tell because the lines are thicker where the flower would be darker. I wish I could do a better job standing up, but I just do what I do. Okay, so your flower, when you're finished, your flower has, it looks like, you know, it's got a little depth to it, like it's a real flower. So that's the purpose of the blendability, so that you can color the same shade in the same color in 3 different shades. And they're labeled on there. It'll say medium, light, and dark. Right here. Marker dark, marker medium, marker light. Alright, so that's the blendabilities. The last thing I want to talk to you about are these 2 tools. When you're working with ink, there are times when you want to like color just the edge of a paper, just to give it some, make it look finished and professional. So you would take your dauber, just stick it on the end of your finger and get it wet on the ink pad. And see, I can tell I've got some ink on there because it shows up. And then you just flick it on the edge like this. And you can see that that just gives this paper a finished look. To me it looks a little off because this ink is Strawberry Slush and the marker I used was Melon Mambo, so they're, in my eye, they're clashing. If I were really doing this, I would have used Melon Mambo as an edge. So that's what you use a dauber for. You can also use a dauber for coloring. So let's say that this is going to be messy, but let's say that this is bigger and I just want to color it with my dauber like this. And then that gives it kind of a soft, flat look. You can see the difference in what it looks like when you use the blendability as compared to a dauber or something flat. Okay, the sponge. Sponges are used exactly the same way daubers are, but they're so big and bulky that when you get your sponge, you actually should just cut it into wedges like this. And then you use it the same way you do a dauber, but you hold on to it like this, ink it up on your ink pad just the way you did the dauber. Gets a little bit of ink. They're harder. Sponges are harder to use, I think. So get a little ink on there, and then you can daub the edges of your paper or whatever it is. Like maybe you want to make a little soft background on your paper like that. So you can just use it to daub the paper. I don't know if you can even see that. No. But there is a very light shade of pink. Probably you would use it more with blue if you're trying to, you know, color in the sky in a background or something. Alright, so those are the inking tools. Thank you very much for sticking with me. That's the end of episode 3 of Tools of the Trade. The next episode is going to be, right now it's a mystery. Oh. The next episode is going to be about the paper. Till then, thanks for watching.